Thank you very much, and first of all, thank you to Bench and the flexibility. I had a little bit of a logistical challenge because I was in Europe yesterday, arrived last night, and had to go and come here this morning, but the flight was a little bit delayed. Let me take you on a journey now to look into what the challenges are, and I actually start with the large-scale global challenges here. After I hit that and what the market resilience is to it, I look into the hospitality market and the KSA Vision 2030 and the government initiatives to basically push tourism in the kingdom. First, the global challenges and market resilience. If you look into the current challenges, you look at a perfect storm, actually. You look at inflation, recession, COVID-19, we are not completely out of it. We might think so, but we are not. The war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, supply chain disruption, great resignation. It's huge, it's significant. It's like a perfect storm. Let us look into some of them a little closer, but before I do so, what are the global themes that we currently see? It's digitalize, decarbonize, localize, privatize, and modernize. And these are linked to the trends and the challenges that I've mentioned before. So these result from what is at the top of the page. If you now look into inflation, you see quite significant figures around the world. However, except perhaps China, you see low figures relative to the rest of the world in the Middle East, which are between the 5% max, but going down to 3.6% in the UAE. For Saudi, you see 2.7, 2.2, in comparison to 9, 8%, or even 13% in Russia. So the market here is a little bit, in terms of the inflation, a little bit decoupled from what you see in the rest of the world. What actually drives inflation in the GCC are the components on the bottom. It's recreation, rent, utilities, and hospitality. And hospitality, why that is the case, I'm going to come to. If you now look into what is the economic situation, and the economic situation is very much linked to the fiscal balance. Whereas in 2020, the fiscal balance was across the GCC states in negative territory. It had recovered quite quickly with the oil price coming up to positive pictures across all countries. So there is a positive fiscal balance which allows the countries to cover, one, their budget, and two, invest. And the second one is very, very important. If you now look into Saudi, the Saudi tourism situation, you see that domestic tourism change that has driven tourism during the COVID years from 2019 to 2021, which are the comparison that I've put on this page. But you also see the inbound tourism, which was obviously also targeted to grow, has significantly suffered from the effects of COVID. But Saudi has navigated economic shocks quite well, quite effective. Since 2017, we see increasing investments into the hospitality and tourism sector. And significant means committed to growing the sector. And I come to a couple of projects at a later stage. You also see expanding the visa offerings, change of the visa offerings, smoothen the process of getting into the country, creating job opportunities in the hospitality and tourism sector, very important to grow that sector. Relocating company headquarters to the capital, Riyadh. We as PwC have moved our headquarters in consulting to KFD around the corner here in Riyadh. So that moves a lot of people, a lot of economic drive to the kingdom. Introducing new laws to develop an international competitive tourism sector. And there are several entities in the kingdom working on the tourism sector and moving the tourism sector up. And there are other measures in the pipeline that are going to come, and I'm sure that these will contribute quite significantly to further grow the sector. We're now looking into the hospitality market, and I guess a couple of those figures, and that's why I go a little bit more quickly through it, have been covered in previous conversations already. Inbound tourism. The goal is to attract 100 million visitors by 2030. And we come to the actual. That is a staggering figure to go for. Increasing capital investment toward enhancing the tourism and travel industry. We already saw that. In hospitality, we have a significant upcoming supply in 5- and 4-star hotels, but also in the 3-star category. There's a lot of growth coming there as well, with Mecca still be the strongest growing market, but the other markets growing as well. And this is growth at the 9, 8, sometimes 10% per year. If you now look between 2019 and 2021, where did tourism actually go? And you see on the left side the domestic tourism, and on the right side the inbound tourism. It has shifted towards visiting friends and relatives on the domestic tourism, and it has shifted a little bit more into leisure, into the inbound tourism. I think that's a trend, the one on the right side here, the 42 to 49, that we are going to see increasing quite significantly. In particular, as more and more attractions, more and more infrastructure will be built to cater for inbound tourism to visit KSA for leisure purposes. That's a little complicated, but I'm not going through all the detail in that slide. Again, you have on the left side domestic, on the right side the inbound tourism, and you see what has happened during the crisis in terms of the inbound tourism over here, where it dropped by 76%, but it's now recovering quite quickly in 2022, which I would consider the first year where we actually are coming out of COVID. The first post or after COVID year, I would consider 2023 it to be, because there were repercussions from the 2020 peak of the pandemic. So you see a significant increase. You see the distribution actually, where from even domestic tourism, Mecca has quite a share, as it is in the inbound tourism, but the big message is quick recovery in 2022, which is expected to continue in 2023, bringing back the Saudi tourism on track in terms of numbers for its visionary goal of 100 million. Here we are talking about 77 plus 16 of the inbound, but this is bound to grow quite quickly. These are hotel data for the past 6 years in the different cities, Riyadh, Jeddah, Mecca, and Dammam. And you see quite healthy ADR rates that are increasing from 2021 to 2022 after they suffered a little bit, not as big as in other countries in 2020, and are further recovering in 2022 with quite good occupancy rates in the 62, 61, 57, 51% range. So a good recovery, and the highest occupancy is still with Riyadh in 2022 with 62%, followed by Mecca with 61%. So recovery all the way in the occupancy as well as in the ADRs. If you now look into the distribution of keys, you see the number of hospitality establishments on the left side, and by category as well as the room supply, and you see that as it is in the most countries in the Middle East, that luxury upper upscale and upscale is dominating the market vis-à-vis the upper mid-scale and economy. In both, in terms of number of establishments as well as room supply. If you now look into the vision, and that's my third section, there's a significant and there's an explicit tourism strategy for Saudi, which is great. Raise the contribution of the tourism sector to the domestic product to more than 10%. That's a quite significant increase. Provide 1 million additional job opportunities and attract 100 million annual visits by 2030. So quite visionary outlooking goal for the tourism sector with significant large-scale growth. And that is embedded in the overall Vision 2030 that obviously has a lot of pillars to it. If you now look into what was done actually to do all this, there's a lot of actions, and by no means this list is complete. It lists what, from our perspective, are the most important actions that have been taken to increase the sector. Tourist visa, the Umrah Plus program, new tourism laws, tourism license, tourism development fund, tourism human capital development, virtual tourist sites and landscaping, free overnight stopovers. The stopover program that Saudi has launched. Saudi has launched. So there are a lot of measures that are supporting the infrastructure and supporting the growth of the sector overall. And as I said, these are not all. This is part of it, and this is part of a portfolio that all supports the bigger vision of the growth of tourism in Saudi and the 100 million visitor vision. If you now look into what are the goals by different KPIs in the sector, hotel keys, more than double. Overnight visits, going to over 100, that is million. International visitors to 55 million, and that's international. Tourism contribution to GDP, as I said, 10%. Tourism jobs plus 1 million. All these figures, these KPI, and they are shown here in comparison to what we see in 2022, are quite aggressive, quite big targets to achieve, to go for, and you need to build a lot of offerings, hotels, infrastructure to attract and enable these visitors to come. And I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation that there were a couple of specific projects actually launched. The Vision 2030 that I was alluding to a couple of times was launched in 2016. Then came NEOM, a huge project, a huge campaign that has been done on this project around the world. And a lot of people, actually it was during the weekend when I was in Europe, they asked me, is NEOM really happening? I just pulled out my phone, because I was there 2 weeks ago, and showed them pictures, because seeing is believing. They see the foundation coming up, and it's really happening. It's obviously a huge project, beyond imagination for a couple of countries and people, but it's a visionary target to go for. The launch of the tourism strategy, the seasons program, very important. How attractive and how successful that has been, I think, is beyond what the founders have actually thought it would be. The launch of the Saudi tourism development, the authority. So all the administrative and authoritative infrastructure is now being built, combined with also the financial support, the funding. Very important to build that kind of infrastructure. A new tourism law has been launched. Digital tourism strategy launched. So it's a deep, multi-authority approach towards growing a sector overall. Alula, phase 1 completion in 2028. Doria Gate completion. I think this is one of the largest construction sites actually in the world that we see there with phase 1. Not to talk about phase 2, which is bigger than the phase 1. And then Red Sea project completion, Qiddiya completion, all offerings that are great to have in place. And working together to achieve this are Ministry of Tourism, without going into all the detail, the Development Fund, the Tourism Authority, Red Sea Authority, Tourism Connectivity Program, the Development Council. So there are a lot of authorities working together to achieve, and actually you can already see that's on the way to get there. To conclude, what is important is reimagine. We are experiencing multiple challenges, as we have seen, but we need to address them in a productive way and reimagine some of the models even of the industry models that we have seen before. Strategy, have a robust, detailed strategy in place. Very important. Proactivity, be proactive to go there. Do not wait until they come, but build it that they will come. Foreign investments in KSA will significantly increase over the next couple of years. Resilience. We saw the resilience of the market and the experience that has been built to establish the market, but also increase the knowledge in reference to the sector. And with that, I would like to thank you.